Okay, a lot of learners get confused about the route that they should take while first learning the drums, whether they should be working on rudiments, whether they should be working on songs, or whether they should be working on their technique. So I'm here today to tell you that you should treat it more like a language learning process to help you build that holistic overall ability while learning the drums. Okay, today I'm going to be showing you the method that's really going to build that foundation of your drumming that's then going to allow you to branch out and build your own style as you begin to learn the drums. Okay, let me try and convince you of this language comparison then. So first off, you've got your sort of vocab in your languages or your describing words and stuff like that, and that's the patterns you learn on the drums. So the rudiments, all the different sort of rolls, drags, that sort of thing that allow you to express yourself on the drums. And that all comes in the context of obviously your grammar in the language learning, which is sort of the rules you follow, the timings, the sort of dynamics that you use on the kit that allow you to frame that sort of vocab. How fluent you are at language is kind of comparable to how good you are at improvisation, so using all of that vocab and the rules to being able to express exactly what you want to pair with other people in a sort of conversation, you could say, with other band members. And then finally, your sort of practice is very similar to your conversation. So when you're practicing on the drums, you're almost having a conversation with your band members, sort of the call of response, and that allows you to become sort of more fluent at the language. So why does this matter as a beginner? So as a language learner, you wouldn't typically learn all of your vocab without learning all of your grammar. As such, on the drums, you shouldn't just sit there practicing loads and loads of rudiments without playing any beats. That doesn't make any sense. Like if you're learning a language, you probably wouldn't learn a whole dictionary before trying to have a conversation, if that makes sense. You learn all the grammar as well. So that brings back to that sort of holistic approach to learning the drums, where you combine everything, so your sort of rudiments, your beats, everything together in moderation to allow you to progress a little bit faster, rather than you just sitting there practicing rudiments for ages and not playing any beats, or just playing beats and not practicing your rudiments, which sort of doesn't build your vocabulary on the drum set. That being said, it kind of brings me on to my next point, is that you should have a sort of, not an end goal, but a sort of vision for where you want your drumming to be. For example, you might want to play with friends. Next example, you might want to be a proper technical musician that plays at a really, really high standard. Or yeah, you might just be in it for playing your favourite songs or playing with mates. But the thing is, you want to build the same foundations no matter where you're going that allow you to progress in the different directions of expressing your drumming, whether that be with friends or in a really, really technical, proficient manner. Okay, so this first section is all about your sort of first words as such. So this really doesn't have to be on a kit. If you haven't got a kit yet, probably good if you're a beginner not to buy an entire kit before you start. This can be done on pillows, this can be done on a practice pad, which I'd recommend getting. And yeah, we're going to build up from there. So some of your first words or sounds that come in words come from all the different things that you can hit on the drums. So you're using your right foot to hit the bass drum, left foot for the hi-hat, left hand and right hand can hit anything from the snare, the high tom, the low tom, or the mid tom if you have one, and the cymbals as well. Okay, so the first sentence I want you to build is your sort of classic basic rock beat that everyone learns on their first lesson. So I want you to take a bar, I want you to split it into 8 bits, and I'm going to get you to put the right hand on each one of those. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, sort of equivalent. And then on 1 and 3 you're going to be putting the foot, so, and then on 2 and 4 you're going to be putting the left hand. So take this really slowly, isolate each bit, so you can do and play around with not adding those sort of and notes in on the right hand, so until eventually you can play the whole big groove on your first lesson. That's the groove to a gazillion different songs throughout pop and everything, that sort of thing. And then you can speed it up when you have the chance, always working with a metronome in your ear. So it sounds a bit like this. So yeah, and there's your first sentence complete straight away. Why I think it's so important to learn a groove on your first lesson is it keeps drumming fun. You can then go and apply that to a million different tunes, speed them up, slow them down. And that keeps the first sort of month to a year of drumming almost. You can even stretch it out that far, fun, and not working on your technique straight away, which we will get onto because it's very important. But that can sort of tire beginners out sometimes and cause them to lose motivation to learn the drums, which is not really what you want at all. Okay, moving on to the debate that we kind of touched on in some previous clips, and that is the debate that beginners have between learning songs and learning technique. So I'm going to go back to the language analogy again, because that's sort of the theme that we're following with this video. And I'd say that, especially with English, you sort of begin your English learning journey with sort of conversation with friends, family, whatever that is. And then as you move through your journey, as you go into school, you start learning about grammar rules and stuff like that. But the point is, to start, you learn with that conversation. So I think that when you learn the drums, you should be starting with those grooves, really start practicing speaking on the kit before you move on to, as you gradually move through your drumming career, you're going to move more and more into technique, because you're going to move on to harder and harder things that you can't just feel out through playing the drums itself. So you need to be learning those rules to sort of break those barriers that you find in songs. So that being said, as a beginner, I'd say 70 to 80% playing songs and maybe 20 to 30% working really focused on that technique so that you can break through those barriers and you can play harder songs, and then that will make your drumming experience a bit easier. So how would I go about learning a song as a beginner? So first off, I'd listen to the song loads. I remember when I first started, I was really listening to songs on repeat over and over again, really listening to what the drummer was doing. I'd slow it down, so I'd slow it down to 50%. I try and figure out what the guy was doing, I try and find a transcription online, learn in sort of, 4 to 8 bar chunks, and really practice with a metronome, and then speed it all the way up, and yeah, have to try and have as much fun as you can as well at the same time. To go along with that, if you find yourself hitting a wall in a song, for example, you're not fast enough, you can't play a specific pattern, then go and research what is the drummer doing and what could I be practicing in my sort of 20 to 30% of my time when I'm doing technique that's going to allow me to break through that barrier and to play the song better, and then that's just going to allow your technique time to be more motivated and then allow you to push through and break more barriers when you're learning the drums. Okay, so let's quickly talk about limb independence. So what does that mean? It means being able to play each of the different parts of a groove on each of your limbs independently of one another, and being able to think about them while you're playing the entire groove. So if we go back to that original beat that you learned in the sort of first lesson of, what have we got there? So we've got the right hand, we've got the left hand on the snare, and the right foot there. So being able to play those independently while you're learning, being able to combine different ones is going to help you think about in the future, changing different bits, and going to allow you to learn a bit quicker. Okay, so let's talk pronunciation, so the sort of ways that you say things on the kit and how that relates to things on the drums. So I'm going to say you want to be having really, really nice and loose movements, so you don't really want to be stiff like this because you're going to kill the drums basically, because you're going to kill your wrists and your elbows. You want to make sure that your stool is the right height, you want to make sure your drums are the right height so you can reach everything properly. Make sure your pedals are not too far away, not too close, make sure you're not cramping up. Also make sure you're wearing those earplugs, make sure you're not getting ear damage, and that's going to make your pronunciation or playing on the kit a lot better for your long-term health and for your quickness of learning the drums. So those early pronunciation rules that we were talking about are really, really easy to fix at the start, but if you really keep doing them wrong over your drumming career, they become really annoying to fix later, so just get them down early and you'll be fine. I actually wanted to talk about one last one, and that it becomes very easy as you go through the drums, and that's sitting down at the kit and playing the same thing every single time you sit down. So you learn your first groove, you might want to play that for weeks and weeks and weeks because you really love playing to one song, and that's fine if you want to stay at the same level. But if you really want to improve, you want to become and get out of your comfort zone and try new things, that's going to help you progress a lot quicker than just staying stagnant. Okay, so let's talk about some different paths that you could take as a beginner learning the drums. So the first off is a sort of classic, I want to jam with my mates as quickly as I can. So probably here you want to be learning a couple of different grooves of each style, so jazz, rock, punk, that sort of thing. The simple grooves there, and going out and finding people to play with as quickly as possible to get that sort of timing down. And yeah, you're conversating a lot, but you run the risk of having a couple of technique deficiencies, which can be patched up later, but you don't want to leave them too long, because otherwise they'll develop into bigger issues. So the second, harder and more technical route is the person that just wants to be as good and as technical with the drums as quick as they can. So here, you really want to be locking in on your rudiments, your sort of patterns, and your sort of harder technique movements as early as you can, to quickly be able to build up that really amazing foundation that's going to allow you to flourish in any genre you want, whether that be jazz or rock. But you do run the risk of burning out and not enjoying the drums because you're just sat there practicing paradiddles or your push-pull technique for hours and hours a day, and yeah, it kind of kills the fun of drumming. Okay, as we move on to our sort of final and third way of learning the drums, is the one I'd recommend, is that sort of balanced language learning approach. We talked about the high amounts of conversation early on, so the high amounts of groove playing. If you've got others to play with, then that's great. And then slowly building up that grammar practice, or that rudiment practice, as we'd say on the drums, that's going to allow you to break those barriers. The thing is, all of these paths will end up in the same place. You'll end up as a very, very good drummer in the end. Other ones, maybe the ways might be slightly quicker than others, but I think the main thing is to pick the approach that's going to keep you motivated to playing the drums. Because a person that's practicing very, very badly is better than someone that's not practicing at all. So I believe that it's important for you to just keep practicing as as much as you can, even if it's not the most efficient way. Okay, and finally, this is some stuff to think about as you move out of that beginner sort of section of your learning, so 6 months to a year, and things to think about afterwards that's going to accelerate your learning process. So firstly, I'd have you expand your vocab, try out new genres, try out new time signatures, new rudiments and things like that. Next off, don't forget the basics, but they should be sort of ingrained in you, and you can start thinking about the way that you play the drums and your voice and how you should play the drums. Next off is developing a really solid and consistent practice routine. It doesn't have to be long, so I'd say something like 15 to 20 minutes daily is always going to beat you playing like 2 to 3 hours at the weekend in one big go. So consistency is really key. And finally, if you find yourself plateauing, you might want to think about lessons. So obviously there's a lot of good stuff here on YouTube, but also out there are some really good drum teachers that can help you overcome your plateaus. So to finish off, the language method is all about that vocab, that grammar and that practice to give you that fluency on the kit that you're going to have after a couple of years of playing. A couple of things to remember is that consistent practice routine and keeping everything nice and tight, and to have fun at the beginning, because you want to stick with something with all the routes leading to the eventual goal of you being fluent on the kit. So yeah, if you want any more tutorials, do let me know down in the comments, do drop a sub and a like if you have enjoyed, and yeah, do check out some other videos and have a good rest of your day.